The LASIK Vision Institute offers free virtual consultations. That's all your questions answered, all from the comforts of home. So don't wait. This simple 20-minute call can start your journey to 20/20 vision. Right now, the LASIK Vision Institute's offering $1,000 off their Wavelight laser when treated in November. That's $500 off per eye with guaranteed financing. So visit mylvioffer.com now. Must mention this promotion and be treated in November of 2023 to qualify. $1,000 off for both eyes on standard Wavelight price. $500 off for one eye. Cannot be combined with any other offers. See details at mylvioffer.com.
Good evening. Yep, we're doing it live right here in the 5 o'clock hour in Los Angeles. Mottek On Money, live on the air on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast at kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, and all your favorite podcast platforms. Well, finally, looks like a Hollywood ending to the actors' strike. Yep, the big news here. SAG-AFTRA's negotiating committee has approved a tentative deal with the major Hollywood studios that would end the nearly 4-month-long strike that has sidelined thousands of workers in Hollywood and basically shut down all production here. In a unanimous vote this afternoon, the SAG-AFTRA TV Theatrical Committee approved a tentative agreement with the producers, bringing an end to the 118-day strike. That's straight off the presses here. The union statement coming out just a short time ago. The strike officially ends at 12:01 a.m. on Thursday, November 9th. That's just after midnight tonight. Now, the tentative deal, which still has to be ratified by the union's board and members, would boost minimum pay for members, increase residual payments for shows streamed online, and bolster contributions to the union's health and pension plans. It also establishes new rules for the use of artificial intelligence, a major source of concern for actors. The LA Times reports the breakthrough came after a tense week, with studio chiefs recently presenting what they had called their last, best, and final offer, which the executive said addressed the guild's demands. And the two sides met Saturday afternoon to go over the proposal, and company reps stressed that they needed movement from SAG-AFTRA to be able to salvage the current TV season. And then they spent 4 days scrutinizing and debating the proposals before delivering the union's answer. So the bottom line, the big news here, looks like the actor strike has come to an end. It will end officially after midnight tonight. I'll discuss this big breaking news tonight, the latest Hollywood actor strike news, with labor law attorney Thomas Lenz with the law firm Atkinson Adelson, past chair of the Labor and Employment Section for the State Bar of California, and also lecturer in law at the USC Gould School of Law. He'll be joining me live later this hour. As far as the market is concerned, we saw a mixed finish today. Stocks closed mostly higher, extending the S&P 500 index and NASDAQ's longest winning streak in 2 years. The Dow coming in for a closing loss of 40 points. The S&P 500 managed a closing gain of 4, and the NASDAQ closed up just about 11 points. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell offered no remarks on monetary policy when he welcomed participants to a Fed conference on economic forecasting ahead of the opening bell today. Chairman Powell on Thursday is due to deliver a more closely watched speech. The markets will be glued to that. On the earnings front, we see Rivian Automotive moving lower by about 2.5%, giving up early gains after the EV maker narrowed its quarterly loss and said it ended an exclusivity deal with Amazon for its last-mile electric delivery vans. And after the closing bell, we see Disney shares up about 3.5%. After the media giant announced earnings that beat analysts' expectations, a big jump in streaming users and vowed to increase annual cost cuts to $7.5 billion from $5.5 billion. Joining us live now on the markets, your money, the economy, and the whole works tonight. Joining us live is Jim Hausberg, investment expert, money manager, managing director at Hightower Advisors in Beverly Hills. Jim, thank you very much for coming to the line here. Mixed finish here, but certainly we've been on a roll. Give us your view of this latest market action here, first of all.
Well, first of all, thank you, Frank, for the kind words. I don't know if there is an expert in my business, but I've been at it a long time, so I'll take whatever I can get.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, it's really incredible when you think back to I don't know, I'm going to say 7 or 8 trading days ago, and the S&P was way down, 41.25. I think it hit now 43.78, 7-8% move, and it's all tied to Powell's comments on the economy and interest rates. It's an interest rate-driven market, and he didn't talk or get into rate cuts, but he sort of hinted if the economy continues to slow down, that could happen, but he didn't say that. But I think we've seen the high in the Fed raising. They're going to obviously keep their eye on the inflation data and make a determination. But I think we've seen the high in terms of the Fed raising. And if the economic data, which is not so bad, but continues to soften, I think that that'll be pretty sound, and it leaves room for possibility next year of a possible rate cut, and it really could have an impact on the real estate industry. A lot of these conversations have been about higher rates and refinancing, and how are these banks and lenders going to be able to do it, and I think the government feels a little pressure on that. So I really think this is an interest rate-driven market. It's been that way on the downside, Frank. As rates started moving up when the Fed, had to combat inflation, stocks really got hit, and they've been the big benefactors over the last week or so. So we had an S&P that was up 20% earlier in the year, then down to 7%. And the last, 5 or 6, 7 sessions, we're back to 15% up market, which is really hard to believe, but we are where we are.
And the big news here in Hollywood tonight, it looks like the actor strike is coming to an end. That's got to be good news for a lot of the folks that you interact with here in this area, Jim. And what about the media names at this point already? We've seen Disney rally in after-hours trading on its earnings news. Earlier, we saw Warner Brothers Discovery stock down nearly 20% after the studio and streaming video firm reported a wider-than-expected third-quarter loss. Revenue just topped expectations. What about the media names and your reaction to the end of the strike here?
Yeah, well, the end of the strike's a great thing, period. Obviously, we'll see how it turns out, but getting people back to work, especially in where we live, Frank, is super important. And I've been saying all along for the few times we've been on about, strikes in all different sectors, and things seem to be working out, and it's good for everybody. Maybe people are making more money, which could hurt the bottom line of corporate America. But as I've said before, I'll say it again, more money in the consumer's pocket's a good thing. So I think that'll do well. Disney's an interesting story. They have incredible assets. The stock, as everybody knows, has been really a poor performer for years now. I think it got up to $200 a share several years ago, down to, the high 70s, and now we're, in the 85, 88 range with better numbers. I think it's a great stock to own. I think it's a cheap stock, and Iger's back in place there, and we'll see where this goes. I think their numbers for streaming was quite good. They got the theme parks. They own ESPN, which, some say they're going to spin that out into a public offering. I obviously don't have that information, but I think the media stocks are a good play, and they're, way behind the markets.
On the air live with Jim Hausberg, and also on the labor front in Vegas, we see the labor union representing tens of thousands of Vegas hospitality workers announcing today that it has reached a tentative deal with casino giant Caesars Entertainment. That's a major breakthrough that could help avert an unprecedented strike there at more than a dozen hotel casinos on the Las Vegas Strip. Are any of the casino names getting your attention nowadays?
Not really a player in that space, Frank. They like airlines also, they have their moments, and they're more trading vehicles. If you catch those right, you can do pretty well. But there's more and more casinos opening. The exciting play really in Las Vegas is the Sphere, which is, the Madison Square Garden spinoff, the Dolan family. That's an incredible venue, 17,500 it holds. The shows they put on inside I've heard are tremendous. I think U2 is the only act that's been there. But that's an interesting stock play if you want to look at Las Vegas, the Sphere. I think the symbol is SPHR.
All right, we're getting ready for the LA Auto Show coming here at the end of the month, and EVs, of course, are very much in focus. There, as well as on Wall Street, we see Lucid stock down 8%. Looks like it's hitting a record low here. And Rivian also moving lower today on its latest earnings report. Of course, Tesla has had its ups and downs. What about the EV names here?
Well, I think the EV companies themselves, how their stocks perform, the valuations on these are just too high in my view for a long period of time because the revenues are coming in. Rivian had, great numbers for them in terms of the number of cars that were produced and sold. But, it's a $20 billion, $18 billion valuation. There's no earnings for a while. I think that hurt Lucid as well. But when you look at EVs, it's all Tesla, Frank. That stock's done incredibly well. I mean, for a long period of time, 10 years now, I think. So that is the leader. The interesting part is, I think I read 7-8% of the car market is electric. It's going to go much higher. So maybe some of these other companies are good investments as well. But I'd probably stick with Tesla, maybe speculate a little bit with Rivian. I don't know the Lucid story at all. But more and more people, I think, are going to buy electric cars. It's much obviously better for the environment. And we're starting to see charge stations in multiple places, prices coming down a little bit. What's sort of interesting is oil prices have come down so much recently with the outbreak of the war in the Middle East. You would have thought oil would be over 90, closing in on 100. And now we're seeing it in the high 70s. And I've noticed that from time to time when oil goes up, the EV stocks tend to do a little better. When oil goes down, people are like, well, gas is cheap. Maybe I'll keep the car I have. But that's all short-term stuff. I think EV is here forever, and I think Tesla's the leader.
And it looks like oil now in the mid-70s here, up 26 cents here after hours to 75 and change. What about the oil names, which, of course, have had a big run this year?
Yeah, I think last time I was on, a little over a week ago, we talked about oil, and stocks had performed quite well, and now we're seeing weakness. I don't know if there's, increased supply coming out of areas that we wouldn't think. Maybe Saudi Arabia is pumping more than we know. Maybe the United States is pumping more than we know. But, I wouldn't have made the bet that oil would drop this much with the war breakout. So, the energy stocks, as I've said before, over a long period of time, I'm going back 20, 25 years, have not been great stocks to own. It's from a market cap perspective, the valuations of all these oil companies, versus the S&P, it's about 5-6%, if that. Going back to the 80s, oil was in the 25 to 30% range. It was a much bigger part of the economy. But right now, the leaders are technology, consumer discretionary, healthcare, industrials. Energy's had a pretty good run on a relative basis to others, but I'm just not a big fan of those long term.
All right. Remember when fake meat was big, Beyond Meat, flat after hours after the fake meat maker posted quarterly results that topped analysts' revenue and earnings estimates, and Beyond Meat reporting a narrowing loss but declining sales. We saw that trend come and go, it looks like. What about anything else that you're picking up? Of course, the AI stocks were big this year. As we wind down 2023, anything else that's catching your attention?
Well, I just say this. For these small-cap NASDAQ names with no real earnings in the foreseeable future, the valuations, the multiples over the last 24 months have come way down. Beyond Meat, one of them, Peloton, another. Even some tech names were trading just at too high a multiple. A lot of these companies are doing well, Frank. Don't get me wrong. But the valuations that they were trading at was just way too high. I thought back in 2000 at the dot-com bubble we had learned our lesson about valuations, but we haven't, and we all got caught, on the short end last year with some growth funds, down 40 to 50%. And the companies that are in these funds and in the tech space and in some of these consumer names are doing okay. It's just the valuations were out of whack. Rates went up, hurt the valuations, and we are where we are. I would say this, though, and for other things I'm doing, and I said it last time, interest rates on the short end of the market and even a little longer are pretty good. You can buy treasuries at 5.5%, 5%, call it 4.50 going out 10 years. You put that into a portfolio with equities, S&P names, just to simplify this, that historically have done 9 to 10%. So you take a balanced portfolio, 50 stocks, 50 bonds, and today you could really see a 6 or 7% return. And I think people would take that in a second. It's just nice to know that you can put money away today in safety and get paid.
For decades, Rolling Stone has set the bar for entertainment publications. Today, Rolling Stone Music Now takes over in podcast form.
We have Michael Azerrad, who was Nirvana's very first biographer. I'm not sure how many people realize how many of the best songs on In Utero were written way beforehand.
To be fair to Kurt, he was also a new father. There was a lot of stuff distracting him. It wasn't just drugs, although that was certainly a major factor.
Rolling Stone Music Now, wherever you listen.
And in the last, let's say going back now 18 months to the last, 5 or 6 years, bonds are paying nothing. And nothing to me is 1%. So I think money's going to continue to flow into the bond market. It has been for a while. And I think a combination of stocks and bonds, high quality, although small cap had a big bounce. So you can mix it up a little bit there. It's a good time to be in the markets.
All right. People still licking their wounds in their bond funds with that getting back to that 60-40 portfolio, it looks like bonds maybe down, for the third year in a row there, that we've never seen anything like that. What are you telling your folks who are watching what's happening with the bond funds?
I look back, and my point was, it's not been a good place to have been. I don't know why people would buy bonds when they're paying such a small rate. To buy bonds at 10 years, 5 years, at 1.5, there's no real upside. So the performance, just on a price basis, has been horrible. Now, remember, the credit is good. So if you're buying treasuries or munis or high-quality corporates, you're still getting your money back at maturity. It's just now you're not getting a 1% return. You're getting a 4 or 5% return. In some cases, a little lower quality, high-yield bonds, 7 or 8%. So if the economy doesn't fall off a cliff, and it does not appear like that's going to happen, some of the economic data that's been coming out has been softer, but not like disastrous. So last week we had the jobs number come out. The economy added 100,000 jobs less than expected. Very positive for bonds, very positive for stocks, because rates are contracting a bit, at least in the public markets, not yet from the Fed. So it sounds funny to think that unemployment rate goes up. That's good for the economy. If it goes up a lot, it's not. But I think we're well positioned here, and I would expect this rally to continue between now and the end of the year. And during an election year, as we know, markets tend to do pretty well. And it's the presidential election. That's going to be the big talk next year.
All right, before we let you off the hook here, Jim Hausberg, any specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Not really taking it off. Again, prefer high quality, the tech space, as I spoke about last time, growth stocks, both for consumer and tech. I still think those are the best places to be long term. And if rates continue their move down, I think that's where you're going to do best. Industrials look attractive. Defense industry, unfortunately, because of the war going on, people have been talking about that. Healthcare is, to me, recession resistant, so you always want to have some money there. So I'd keep it spread out, but I'd stick with the bigger, high-quality names. But again, if we get this lower rate environment, I think some of these smaller names could perform well also. I would stay with companies within the United States that are domiciled here. These foreign markets, emerging markets, and developed Europe have underperformed for so long. I guess there will come a time where they'll do a little better, but maybe keep some money in there. But I focus on the U.S.
Great, Jim. Thank you very much for taking the call tonight. That is Jim Hausberg, Managing Director, Hightower Advisors, based in Beverly Hills. Jim, thanks, and have a great evening. Thank you very much for taking the call.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Frank.
Thanks a million. And coming up, we'll talk more about the big story this evening, the breaking news that SAG-AFTRA's negotiating committee, the Actors Union negotiating committee, approving a tentative deal with the major Hollywood studios that would end the nearly 4-month-old strike that has sidelined thousands of workers in Hollywood. I'll talk about that, and I'll talk about it with labor law attorney Thomas Lenz coming up very shortly. Folks, people like you and me have our ear to the ground in all things business. We like to be informed and well prepared, and as important as finance is, I want you to have a plan in case you're hit by someone not paying attention to the road. Thinking ahead serves us well, and even still, we can get caught off guard as people are so focused on their destination that they might not have a plan if they're in an accident that's not their fault. That's why I encourage you to put my friend, attorney Clark Fielding's number in your phone. 833-88-SHARK's the number. So if you're hurt in an accident, you'll be ready to win with your strategy to make Clark Fielding your very first call. Fielding Law aims for the highest possible settlements, considering you might need long-term care, rehab, compensation for lost wages, and any ongoing physical or emotional pain. So if you're hurt in any kind of an accident, call for a free consultation with Fielding Law. You can trust them. They're honest, respected, and your strategy in case you get into that unexpected accident. Motorcycle, truck, pedestrian, scooter, hit and run, boating, or bicycle accidents, you name it. The number to call is 833-88-SHARK. That's 833-88-SHARK, or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. 790 KBC welcomes Disney Junior live on tour at the Acrisure Arena coming up on November 17th. Tickets on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. And right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-790-5222. You can get a pair of tickets to the show if you're caller 9. Call right now, 1-888-790-5222. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Mixed finish for the market today. The Dow pulling back 40 points after its big recent run-up. We're at 34,112. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ, though, extending its best winning streak in a couple of years with the S&P 500 of 4 at 4,383. The NASDAQ up 10.5 at $13,650. The yield on the 10-year note is back down to 4.5% after popping above 5% recently, which really spooked the market. The price of oil has been pulling back lately. Right now in after hours, up about 80 cents at $75.71 a barrel. The damage has been done at Southern California gas pumps. As we've seen in the past, the gas prices go up like a rocket when oil prices go up, but they come down like a feather when oil prices come down. We're seeing that again. Right now, regular down 1 cent overnight to $5.22 on average. In the L.A. Long Beach area, $5.58 the average price for premium, and $6.08 now the average price for diesel. In the cryptos, we see Bitcoin up about $200 now at $35,777. Ethereum up 5 at $1,893. Doge at 7 cents. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KBC. Looks like a Hollywood ending to the actors' strike. In case you hadn't heard, looks like it'll be ending after midnight tonight after several tense days of negotiations following a nearly 4-month strike. The Writers Guild had reached a deal with studios back in September, and now, according to the latest news from the union itself, SAG-AFTRA's negotiating committee has approved a tentative deal with the major studios that would end the nearly 4-month-long strike that has sidelined thousands of workers here in Hollywood. Well, joining us live now, right out of Central Casting on this, perfect timing here, labor law attorney Thomas Lenz with the law firm Atkinson Adelson, past chair of the Labor and Employment Section for the State Bar of California, and also lecturer in law at the USC Gould School of Law. Thank you very much, Thomas Lenz, for taking the call and give us your reaction to this big news here this evening.
Well, thank you, Frank. I think this is really great news. I am hoping that it brings an end to the strike. Certainly, I mean, there's been the news that as of midnight tonight, strike activity will end, but we now have the process to look forward to of union leadership reviewing the deal points and presumably this deal going before the members with a ratification vote. So it will be up to the union to sell this deal to the membership, and if it is ratified, that should put everybody in place to continue working and to live under these deal points that have been negotiated. If the ratification vote is not successful, it would look to me, in typical course, that the parties would go back to the bargaining table. Hopefully that does not happen. I think tonight is an evening for cautious optimism that everything goes forward smoothly and this deal is done.
From what we're gathering from the union statement, they said it was a unanimous vote of their SAG-AFTRA TV Theatrical Committee approving this tentative deal, with the producers bringing an end to the 118-day strike. And the strike, they say, officially ends at 12:01 on Thursday, November 9th, just after midnight tonight. And you're right, the tentative contract still has to be approved by the union's board and members. Rank and file would boost minimum pay for members, increase residual payments for shows streamed online, bolster contributions to the union health and pension plans. And the big sticking point, which looks like they went to the mat on here, was establishing new rules for the use of artificial intelligence. That was a major source of concern for actors. And any information about how that was finally resolved?
Well, there's just a lot of review of the verbiage and the detail going down to the nth degree on how people would be monetized for the AI. And I think that anytime you're dealing with new subject matter in an agreement, you're creating a template, a precedent that will provide guidance for how these issues are addressed in future contracts. So it's really something that requires a lot of, I would say, careful oversight, being the first time that it appears in a deal.
Very big news, and the hot labor summer also included the first dual strike in Hollywood since, 1960, I believe it was, the writers and the actors going out on strike simultaneously pretty much, and then the writers did settle back in September, and now it appears the actors are also settling. So when do you think we'll get back to business as usual in Hollywood if everything goes as planned here?
Well, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I would think. Certainly we've got the holiday season coming up, and that's always something that gets in the way of normal business. But I think that people will probably look for ways to work around that. I think as they did in light of the pandemic and the restrictions there, people were not able to work, and suddenly once it was available, the work picked up significantly. So I'm hoping it'll be soon.
We're on the air live with labor law attorney Thomas Lenz, and you guys must be busy there. So many issues coming up, of course, coming out of the pandemic and all that, including all of this labor strife, the hot labor summer turning into a hot labor autumn. Hotel workers still striking. We've seen nurses on strike. In Las Vegas, the labor union there representing tens of thousands of Vegas hospitality workers just announced today they reached a deal with casino giant Caesars, averting what would have been a big strike there. Give us an update here on the big picture, labor strife here in Southern California.
Well, it's interesting because the labor activity has been so much in the public eye, with so many major employers involved in activity, either organizing or strike activity, that people's awareness of their rights at work and the impetus to speak out, whether it's through activity in a non-union workplace or strike activity in a unionized workplace, we're just seeing a lot more activity, and each situation seems to snowball and incentivize the others. And I think there is a new awareness about collective action and collective bargaining. And certainly there will be a lot of perspectives on that, whether that is a good thing or a bad thing. But I think for the unionized workers, the unionized workplace, it's a sign that employees and labor unions are not backing down, and it's time to prepare to deal if you are in that environment. And in addition to that, the rules for union organizing are changing to make it easier for employers to become or to have union representation in their workplace. So every employer needs to be aware of that and make sure that they are up to speed on current rules and they get their policies and so forth in shape. There's just a lot happening.
Certainly. And any other big issues that you're tracking coming out of the pandemic? People, of course, lost their jobs for not getting vaccinated and all that, or is that still a big issue too? Well,
as COVID is increasing in numbers, there's talk about vaccination, and there's talk about remote work, and people in some situations simply don't want to be back in the workplace, and they would rather be working remotely. I think a lot of employers continue to struggle with those issues and trying to maximize performance. Certainly remote work was a lifesaver.
It could be information to change your life forever. Or the Something You Should Know podcast could just be something interesting.
Herb Cohen is one of the all-time legendary great sales trainers and negotiators. And he has some advice that will help you negotiate better. Make the other person feel superior and smarter than you. Care, but don't care too much. If you don't like the deal, walk away and see if the deal doesn't get better instantly.
Something You Should Know, wherever you listen.
And getting people back into the workplace has helped to maintain working relationships and collegiality and so forth. But times have changed, and people's feelings are, and not to mention their life situations, their family situations have really, I think, changed compared to where we were in 2020. So it's a lot of struggling going on.
Well, thanks very much for taking the call on this big news here tonight. That is labor law attorney Thomas Lenz with the law firm Atkinson Andelson in the San Gabriel Valley, having served as past chair of the Labor and Employment Section for the State Bar of California and also lecturer in law at the USC Gould School of Law. Thomas Lenz, thank you very much for taking the call here tonight.
Always my pleasure, Frank. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Let's turn to crime in Los Angeles now. Let's get the latest from former Los Angeles LA City Council member and former LAPD sergeant, now current LAPD reserve officer with, about 55 years of service to the City of Angels. I'm speaking of the Honorable Dennis Zine. Dennis Zine, thank you very much for taking the call here. We saw that homeowner fire back at robbers the other day as he was getting into his house. Some more stunning videos. And today, a robot police dog SWAT standoff involving a man who boarded an L.A. Metro bus with a gun came to a peaceful end today after police deployed a robotic dog. Give us your reaction to these latest reports.
Continuation of the problems that we have here in the City of the Angels. It's interesting that the City Council was not really in favor of that robot dog, but nevertheless, it is now deployed and obviously was successful in that situation on the Metro, on the bus. But we have a continuing saga in Los Angeles, and the saga of crime and violence, and there's some recent cases that we show more corruption in City Hall. One is the LAPD officer who got $1.8 million, $1.8 million in the situation with Rick Jacobs, who was aide to Mayor Garcetti, and that was approved by the council 13-0. $1.8 million on that situation. Was there a crime? It was harassment, but needless to say, the taxpayers are putting out $1.8 million on that. And we have a situation when I did some research on crime and violence. When we look at LA City, LAPD, I found some records. March of 2018, there were 10,057 officers on LAPD. 10,057 in March 2018. Now you look at the current status as of July 2021, 9,386. The numbers keep shrinking. As of October 23, 8,977. So the bottom line is we're losing police officers and crime continues. A lot of people have contacted me. They want to buy guns. They want to get a CCW. LA City is now issuing CCWs, and I caution people, know what you're doing when you're carrying a gun. And we saw that vivid situation where a man's trying to open the door to his home and two people accost him and guns, and we saw nobody got killed, thank goodness. But the fact is this potential victim did have a gun and used it to successfully thwart that attack on himself. Water and power, another situation. We're talking about crime and corruption in Los Angeles. Huge settlement in the disbarred attorney who was involved in the case with the Department of Water and Power. And then you have a lady who's running for city council who gets arrested for drunk driving after she plows into a couple of cars, according to an assembly member. So when we talk about crime, people are victimized over and over, whether it's a DUI situation or an armed assailant or your home broken into or the smash and grabs. And we have a department that keeps shrinking in numbers, and people are in fear. And then we got the problem in the Middle East right now, which creates more frustration and more anger and more fear in the people's minds here in the City of the Angels. There's a lot of things on the plate as we approach Thanksgiving and the end of the year. Hopefully things will improve, but the future does not look very bright at this particular time as far as crime and violence goes.
On the air with the Honorable Dennis Zine, and crime, and let's talk about punishment or lack thereof. This no bail policy, Dennis Zine, how's that working out? And give us an update on how you see that side of the equation.
Well, it's not working out. What we find is the courts are being extremely lenient. The prosecutor, which we know, if Gascon remains prosecutor in Los Angeles County after the next election, we might as well just pick up stakes and leave this county of Los Angeles, because he's doing nothing to help prevent crime or hold people accountable for committing crimes in Los Angeles County. It's absolutely pathetic what that office has turned into. And if the people of Los Angeles County vote to retain him, and I know there are about 10 people running against him, if they vote to retain him, they're all potential victims. And it's a foolishness that would vote for Garcetti for district attorney after we know clearly he doesn't care about victims. Clearly he cares more about the criminal element of this county of Los Angeles. And when a uniformed LA County deputy sheriff is murdered in his police car, stopped at a red light, and Gascon does not believe in filing the death penalty on him, that's an example, the most outrageous example of how bad this district attorney is. So, folks, wake up. If you plan to vote for Garcetti, get your head examined before you go to the ballot box.
Of course, not Garcetti, but Gascon.
Gascon. Well, Garcetti's gone. He's gone to India, but Gascon's the serious situation when it comes to DA. And we know Mayor Garcetti is now an ambassador in India, and the person who was his chief aide, because of that situation, the city has now paid out $1.8 million, and that can go onto Garcetti's resume. And we got Garcetti and Gascon. Garcetti's gone, and hopefully Gascon will follow soon.
All right. What about the recall effort regarding Gascon? Is there anything possible that might happen prior to the next election?
Well, it's in court, and I put a request in this afternoon to get the current status, the current update. I know it's in court. The recall effort that initially failed was renewed. We have it before a judge, and we're waiting for that decision to be rendered. And I've sent in a request today to find out the current status. But there's still hope that will happen. But as we get closer to 2024 and the election, Gascon, we know, is going to be running. He's filed for election. But again, if you've been a victim of a crime, or if you haven't been a victim of a crime, you may be shortly, because Gascon doesn't believe in punishing criminal elements in our city, in our society in Southern California, in LA County. Absolutely pathetic. And I feel for the victims that keep getting victimized, and the district attorney and his own attorneys, the people in his office. He's got a huge number of people who've left. He's got vacancies, tremendous amount of vacancies in that DA's office. They've left his ship because they don't have any confidence in him as a district attorney of LA County.
On the Air Live with the Honorable Dennis Zine, and here's a tough story. Dennis, want to get your reaction to. I'm sure you've seen this after the suicide deaths of one retired and 3 current members of the LA County Sheriff's Department in a 24-hour period. The Sheriff's Department has released a statement saying the department is beyond saddened to learn of the deaths. This is really something. Give us your reaction to this tough news here.
Well, I've seen suicides in law enforcement. Sometimes officers get so frustrated, they do commit suicide. They do have a large suicide rate with law enforcement officers just because of the depression that they go through. This particular situation, we have so many in a short period of time, and they're all for the same department. That's very, very serious and questionable. I'm hoping the investigation finds out what the connection is. There's got to be some connection between those individuals. I don't know what it is. I have no idea. But it's very, very unusual. And there's a lot of suicides that take place with law enforcement people never hear about. But that situation obviously drew attention by the media, and hopefully they can find out what the problem is that generated that, where these dedicated members of law enforcement decided to kill themselves. It's very unusual to have that many at that particular time do that. So no idea, but God bless them, and hope their families can recover from the experience in this disastrous situation that they're encountering.
You're out on the streets as a reserve officer these days. Are you getting support? Do you feel the support from the public out there when you're out there, Dennis Zine?
Well, I'll tell you what I found is a lack of respect. You used to have respect. There's total lack of respect. People get stopped for traffic violation, and what they do oftentimes now, which they never used to do, is they take off. As you approach the car to write a traffic citation, they just take off. The respect for law and order has really been diminished. And I think it's outrageous how bad it is. And officers are very intimidated because of the attitude of the courts, the attitude of the district attorney, and you're risking yourself, your family, your career. So officers are extremely cautious now. They're extremely cautious. You don't find the aggressiveness. And it's not harassing people. It's aggressiveness in trying to apprehend the bad guy, the people who are committing crimes. But when it comes to the traffic violators or whatever the case may be, there's a resistance by many officers just because of survival, their survival mode. And there used to be recaps, how many citations, how many drunk drivers, et cetera. They don't post those anymore. So the attitude is go out there and serve the public, be professional, smile and wave. But officers have learned, don't put your neck out because you can get in trouble and there's no support from the community.
The Honorable Dennis Zine. Dennis, thank you very much for taking the call here tonight. That is former L.A. City Council member, former LAPD Sergeant, now current LAPD Reserve Officer Dennis Zine, live with us here tonight on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with our Legal Eagle Royal Oaks. Straight ahead, Mottek On Money, 790 KBC.
Get an inside look at Hollywood with Michael Rosenbaum.
Let's get into the fascinating, wonderful Bonnie Wright.
Oh, yeah. Ralph Fiennes was the most chilling actor to work around.
He wasn't funny and making jokes.
No. A little bit, but in, Voldemort way.
Did you feel like he got very little direction? They let him do what he was just doing?
I'm sure he was probably the type of actor that would go kind of quietly and speak to the director rather than
What am I doing wrong? What do you want me to do?
Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, wherever you listen.